Mao Yin, known lovingly as Year, was born into a quiet working family in Xi'an, the capital of Shanxi province, where his mother, Jingxi, and father built their daily lives around caring for their only child. Jingxi chose his nickname to reflect her hope that he would grow into an admirable and capable person, becoming the best version of himself. Both parents worked full-time, and their routine revolved around dropping Mao Yin at kindergarten each morning and collecting him again after work, forming a stable and predictable structure in his early childhood. Despite their busy schedules, Jingxi cherished the moments she was able to share with her son. One memory she recalled involved a family visit to the Xi'an City Zoo, where Mao Yin became captivated by a small worm on the ground, pointing it out to his mother with innocent curiosity. These everyday experiences reflected the normalcy of their life, characterized by small joys, careful attention, and a deep emotional bond between mother and child that defined their relationship before his disappearance. On the day Mao Yin vanished, his father followed what he described as their standard routine. After completing his workday, he went to the kindergarten to pick up his son, then continued toward home as usual. Along the way, he stopped at a hotel owned by family members, intending only a brief visit. According to his statement, he left Mao Yin outside for approximately 2 to 3 minutes while he went inside to greet relatives and collect water. When Mao Yin's father returned moments later, the child was no longer there. The space where he had been standing was suddenly empty, and no immediate explanation could be found. Mao Yin, who was 2 years and 8 months old at the time, had vanished without leaving any visible trace or indication of where he might have gone. This event marked the beginning of a prolonged and unresolved search, but at that moment, the only certainty was his sudden absence from the familiar routine of his family's everyday life. It documented the precise sequence of actions that defined that ordinary day, reinforcing how quickly routine shifted into crisis. Mao Yin's disappearance occurred within the span of minutes, transforming a brief pause outside a familiar family location into the moment that altered the family's entire existence. No witnesses were immediately identified, and no clear direction was established regarding where the child could have been taken or how the situation had unfolded. The absence of noise, struggle, or visible disturbance emphasized the suddenness of his vanishing and underscored the difficulty of tracing his movements. The scene remained unchanged, yet Mao Yin was gone, leaving only uncertainty behind and marking the final moment he was seen within his known surroundings. Nothing in the environment indicated what had happened, deepening the factual silence surrounding the precise circumstances of his disappearance there. Jingxi was away on a work trip when the phone call arrived, interrupting an ordinary day with a single urgent demand that she return home immediately. Upon arriving, she was told in one direct sentence that her son, Mao Yin, was missing. The words carried an immediate emotional weight, forcing her into a state of shock that blended fear, disbelief, and a fragile sense of hope. In those first moments, she struggled to accept that he could simply be gone, believing instead that her child might only be lost and would soon be brought back by a kind stranger, acting out of concern and responsibility. This early optimism reflected her refusal to comprehend the permanence of the situation and her instinctive belief that the absence might still be temporary and reversible. Despite the confusion, Jingxi moved into immediate action. She began searching the surrounding neighborhood, walking through familiar streets, and questioning anyone who might have seen her son. She carried photographs of Mao Yin and presented them to local residents, hoping for recognition or helpful information. When personal searches produced no confirmation, she expanded her efforts by printing and distributing more than 100,000 flyers, placing them in public spaces and transportation areas to reach as many people as possible. She also contacted local newspapers, requesting coverage in an attempt to alert a wider audience and increase the chance of someone coming forward with information. These actions demonstrated a determined and methodical response shaped by urgency rather than panic. As hours turned into days, Jingxi remained focused on the belief that Mao Yin could still be returned. Each unanswered question and each silent response from the community tested her resolve, yet she continued to pursue every possible lead available within her immediate reach. The absence of reported sightings gradually revealed a more troubling reality. No one stepped forward with clear information, and no confirmed trace of the child emerged from any of her appeals. The quiet response from the public began to erode her initial optimism, replacing it with the slow and painful awareness that her son's disappearance might not be a simple misunderstanding or brief separation. The emotional shift was gradual, marked by the collision of hope and the growing recognition that nothing about the situation was resolving. Through these early efforts, Jinxie moved from instinctive hope toward a more grounded understanding of the uncertainty before her. Her search continued with persistence, yet each quiet street and unanswered inquiry deepened the realization that Mao Yin's absence was not easily explained. The emotional transition remained rooted in factual awareness rather than speculation. She acknowledged the possibility that the situation might extend beyond a temporary loss, while still holding on to the smallest belief that clarity would emerge. This balance of determination and restraint defined her early response and established the foundation for the prolonged search ahead during those uncertain days. China's one-child policy formed a critical backdrop to Mao Yin's disappearance, shaping conditions that increased the probability of child abduction, especially involving young boys. The strict regulation limited most urban families to a single child, while financial penalties and social consequences awaited those who violated the rule. Within this structure, strong cultural expectations emphasized the importance of male heirs to preserve family names and maintain lineage continuity. The pressure to secure a son placed families in conflicting positions when biological chance did not align with tradition. As Jinxie continued searching for Mao Yin, she began to uncover the broader reality underlying her personal tragedy. Through her research and interactions, she learned that an illegal market for abducted children had developed across the country. Families unable to afford fines for a second child, or those who produced a daughter instead of a son, increasingly turned toward unlawful alternatives. This demand contributed directly to the trafficking of boys, transforming missing children into commodities within an underground system operating beyond legal oversight. Jinxie's awareness of these systemic issues reshaped how she understood her son's disappearance. What had initially appeared as an isolated loss became part of a widespread national pattern linked to restrictive population policies and persistent social expectations. Her discovery revealed that Mao Yin's case reflected a structural problem affecting countless families who shared similar grief. This realization altered the direction and intensity of her search. Recognizing the organized nature of the problem, she approached the situation with a new understanding that extended beyond personal misfortune. Her determination was reinforced by the knowledge that many parents were experiencing the same silent despair, and that her investigation represented more than a search for one child. The connection between government policy, social pressure, and criminal activity clarified the environment in which Mao Yin vanished. By confronting the realities of child trafficking networks and the circumstances forcing rural families into desperate decisions, Jinxie's perspective evolved from singular sorrow toward informed persistence. Her growing awareness did not weaken her commitment. Instead, it strengthened her resolve to continue searching with clarity, recognizing that Mao Yin's disappearance was part of a larger social crisis. This context placed Mao Yin's case within a defined framework of nationally recognized challenges tied directly to policy enforcement and cultural expectation. Jinxie's understanding deepened as she recognized that the disappearance did not emerge from random circumstance alone, but from conditions shaped by regulation, economic hardship, and entrenched belief systems. This awareness provided structure to her continued efforts and clarified why the search required persistence and strategic focus. Rather than viewing her experience as an isolated event, she came to understand its significance within a broader social narrative affecting numerous families. Her response remained factual and steady, guided by awareness rather than speculation, reinforcing her determination to continue seeking answers with disciplined resolve and unwavering purpose. That knowledge consistently informed every step forward. Following Mao Yin's disappearance, the relationship between his parents shifted under the weight of grief, accusation, and emotional strain. Jinxie initially placed responsibility on her husband for the momentary lapse that preceded their son's vanishing, a reaction rooted in shock and unbearable loss. This blame created tension and fostered a climate of conflict that affected nearly every interaction between them. Though they attempted to cooperate and continue the search together, Their shared suffering consistently resurfaced through frustration, exhaustion, and unresolved sorrow. As days turned into months, the constant pressure of uncertainty eroded their emotional resilience and weakened their capacity for mutual support. Persistent arguments emerged as both struggled to process the trauma of uncertainty and perceived fault. Attempts at communication grew strained and increasingly distant, reflecting the depth of their private anguish. Despite maintaining moments of cooperation, the weight of continuous despair overshadowed any remaining sense of partnership. Their shared mission to find Mao Yin remained the singular focus binding them, yet the emotional damage behind closed doors continued to expand. Each setback deepened the sense of isolation and magnified lingering resentment. After years of living within a cycle of hope and despair, the structural foundation of their marriage deteriorated beyond repair. The combination of trauma, exhaustion, and unresolved grief ultimately made separation unavoidable. 4 years after Mao Yin's disappearance, they parted ways, marking another personal loss for Jingxi alongside her missing child. Though the relationship ended, her determination to continue searching for her son remained unchanged. She carried forward independently, prioritizing the search above personal stability or emotional recovery. The fracture of the marriage represented not only the collapse of a partnership, but also the tangible impact of prolonged psychological strain. Jingxi's continuation of the search demonstrated her enduring commitment despite the personal cost imposed by the separation and the emotional void left behind. The absence of her husband's partnership did not weaken her purpose, but instead reinforced her resolve to act independently. She adapted to the reality of navigating the search alone, accepting the emotional distance that had replaced shared responsibility. Her perseverance became a defining feature of her response, illustrating how deeply personal relationships can fracture when subjected to relentless emotional pressure. The dissolution of the marriage underscored the profound consequences of prolonged uncertainty and continuous trauma. Still, Jingxi remained focused on locating Mao Yin, refusing to allow personal loss to divert her from the central objective. Her actions reflected discipline rather than despair, maintaining clarity amid grief. Through persistence, she transformed isolation into determination, ensuring the search continued with structure and intent. The emotional collapse of the family unit thus became another layer of the case's reality, reinforcing the lasting consequences experienced by those left to endure absence. It emphasized how loss extended beyond physical disappearance and reshaped every aspect of Jingxi's emotional existence in term resilience. While reinforcing her commitment to consistency and control, Jingxi devoted herself to an unrelenting weekend search for Mao Yin, traveling across surrounding provinces with disciplined consistency and unwavering focus. Every Friday after finishing work, she boarded transportation and left her city behind, returning late on Sundays after days of continuous effort. This routine demanded physical endurance and emotional strength, yet she maintained it without interruption, believing that constant movement offered the possibility of finding her missing son and restoring a broken reality. A central moment in her search occurred when she received information suggesting a family in Shaanxi had adopted a boy who closely resembled Mao Yin. Driven by renewed hope, Jingxi pursued this lead immediately, traveling between villages and hotels in a sustained effort to locate the family. She waited for hours outside residences, followed changing directions, and continued her journey despite mounting exhaustion and physical strain caused by prolonged travel. Her pursuit extended over more than 48 sleepless hours, during which rest and nourishment were secondary to the urgency of her mission. Each step forward carried anticipation, yet it also deepened the toll on her body and mind. When she finally confirmed the identity of the boy, the realization that he was not her son brought profound disappointment and emotional devastation. This moment of false hope intensified the psychological burden she carried. Following this experience, Jingxi began hearing her son's voice, a sign of the strain imposed by relentless uncertainty. Her mother expressed concern, fearing her daughter might suffer a mental breakdown under the weight of continual disappointment and unresolved grief. Despite these challenges, her determination remained uncompromised. She resumed her routine of continuous travel, refusing to allow despair to halt her progress. The reality of repeated setbacks reinforced the severity of the search and sharpened her resolve. Each false lead served as a reminder of the distance between hope and confirmation, yet she persisted with structured effort rather than surrender. Jinxie's journey through Shanxi illustrated the harsh reality that persistence often carries unbearable emotional cost. She faced the consequence of believing in possibilities that later dissolved, yet this did not weaken her commitment. Instead, it guided her toward a deeper understanding of the challenge before her. The endurance required for these repeated efforts reflected the magnitude of her devotion, demonstrating the extent to which she was willing to sacrifice comfort, stability, and emotional security in her continuous search for Mao Yin. Hope, disappointment, and endurance became interconnected elements shaping her experience. Every mile traveled reaffirmed her refusal to accept uncertain silence. Though each setback caused further strain, it also strengthened her capacity to continue. Her commitment remained steady, defined by resolve rather than defeat, and her search continued forward with disciplined purpose and unwavering determination toward inevitable clarity and measured perseverance. Through relentless motion and disciplined resilience, Jinxie preserved her focus, continuing despite exhaustion, sorrow, uncertainty, and the weight of expectations surrounding every step. Persistence. Jinxie confronted the psychological impact of her prolonged search through careful self-observation and deliberate adjustment of her coping methods in response to sustained emotional strain. After months of relentless effort, she sought medical counsel and discussed her condition with a doctor who addressed both her physical exhaustion and her growing emotional burden. During this consultation, she was told that physical ailments could be treated, but the pain in her heart remained beyond medical repair, a statement that stayed with her and prompted serious reflection. This realization forced Jinxie to examine the depth of her grief and assess whether her emotional state would allow her to continue searching effectively. She understood that the intensity of her sorrow risked overwhelming her capacity for rational action and clarity. The possibility of losing emotional control raised concerns that she might no longer function with focus, stability, or awareness. Recognizing this danger, she made a conscious decision to distance herself from extreme emotional reactions and adopt restraint as a protective strategy. Rather than surrendering to constant despair, she practiced measured control, limiting the intensity of her responses to preserve mental balance. This shift did not remove her grief, but it enabled her to create a structured emotional boundary that allowed her to maintain composure and continuity. Jinxie understood that an emotional breakdown could prevent her from recognizing Mao Yin if he were ever found. She feared that losing her mental stability would compromise the very purpose of her search and undermine her ability to respond appropriately to critical moments. This insight guided her toward a disciplined form of resilience shaped by calculation rather than impulse. Her transformation marked a pivotal transition from raw, consuming grief toward deliberate psychological endurance. She continued her search with renewed clarity, acknowledging her pain without allowing it to govern her actions. This internal adjustment demonstrated the strength of her resolve and the control she cultivated to sustain her mission over time. Jinxie's approach remained centered on stability, awareness, and controlled persistence, reflecting the complexity of living with long-term uncertainty. Her strength lay not in denying her sorrow, but in reorganizing how she processed emotional weight. By redefining her coping framework, she preserved her capacity to continue the search despite continuous strain. Her calculated emotional discipline became essential to her survival and progress, reinforcing her determination to remain focused, stable, and prepared for any possible outcome in her unending pursuit. She accepted that emotional moderation was necessary to preserve clarity and prevent exhaustion from overtaking her judgment. Each measured response reinforced a mental structure designed to withstand ongoing uncertainty and prolonged distress. Through disciplined awareness, she maintained balance, ensuring that pain did not obstruct purpose or weaken direction. This controlled approach allowed Jinxie to move forward with consistent resolve, maintaining psychological strength while continuing her unwavering search. Her focus remained stable, deliberate, and centered on recognition and meaningful reunion. Jinxie gradually established contact with other parents whose children had been abducted, creating a network rooted in shared experience, structured cooperation, and collective determination. This connection emerged from mutual recognition of similar loss and the practical need to strengthen awareness across wider regions. Within this expanding group, families exchanged photographs and printed flyers containing identifying information, enabling consistent distribution across different provinces. The coordinated effort facilitated broader visibility for missing children and encouraged communication between affected communities seeking resolution. Participation in this network provided Jinxie with a structured support system that extended beyond her individual search. Through shared documentation and regular exchanges, she became part of an organized process designed to elevate each case into public awareness. While the collective effort successfully reunited several children with their families, Mao Yin remained missing. Despite this, her involvement reinforced persistence and maintained focus on continual outreach. After 19 years of searching, Jinxie began volunteering with the Baby Come Home website, a platform dedicated to assisting families in reuniting with missing children. Her participation within this online space expanded her role from individual seeker to contributor within a coordinated recovery system. The website enabled structured communication between parents, volunteers, and concerned citizens, strengthening the distribution of case information and reinforcing collective vigilance. Engagement with others who understood the emotional weight of long-term absence provided Jinxie with a renewed sense of connection. Being surrounded by individuals experiencing parallel realities reduced her isolation and helped restore emotional equilibrium. The shared environment validated her grief and reinforced the legitimacy of her continued efforts. The network functioned as both an informational resource and a communal outlet, allowing participants to exchange experiences, strategies, and updates without distortion. Jinxie's involvement highlighted the transition of her mission from a personal struggle into a broader commitment addressing a national crisis. Collective cooperation strengthened advocacy, supporting families confronting similar circumstances and emphasizing structured collaboration. This coordinated response demonstrated how mutual support and shared responsibility enhanced the effectiveness of ongoing efforts. Through participation, Jinxie sustained clarity and direction, motivating her to remain engaged despite continuing uncertainty. The network underscored the importance of unified action within a complex social environment shaped by repeated disappearances. By embedding herself within this community, Jinxie reinforced her role as both participant and advocate. Shared determination driven by documented information and consistent outreach shaped the evolving nature of the search nationwide. Her journey reflected how cooperation provided strength, stability, and renewed purpose, anchoring her commitment within a collective framework dedicated to reunification and awareness. Through solidarity, families advanced beyond isolated suffering toward coordinated resilience. The structure they created allowed for organized communication and strengthened visibility across affected regions. Jinxie's continued involvement demonstrated how collective effort transformed personal tragedy into shared purpose. Her connection to the network provided sustained resolve and mutual understanding, reinforcing the ongoing pursuit of resolution through cooperation, empathy, and persistent awareness within shared committed action. China established a national DNA database in 2009 to assist in reuniting abducted children with their biological parents, creating a structured tool for long-term identification and verification. Jinxie registered her information within this system, submitting the necessary documentation with cautious hope that a scientific breakthrough might finally reveal information about Mao Yin's whereabouts and identity. This action represented her continued faith in institutional resources, despite years of fruitless searching and emotional exhaustion. When the database failed to produce immediate results, disappointment followed, yet it did not diminish her conviction that Mao Yin had been abducted rather than accidentally lost. Through her continued exposure to other cases, Jinxie observed a recurring pattern indicating that most missing children were boys, reinforcing her belief that her son's disappearance aligned with broader national trends involving illegal child trafficking. This recognition shaped her understanding and further justified her persistence. Time moved slowly, marked by repetitive cycles of anticipation and disillusionment. Each passing year extended the distance between her and concrete answers. yet she remained actively involved in ongoing efforts to locate her son. Her commitment endured despite accumulating setbacks and the fatigue that accompanied prolonged uncertainty. During this period of gradual waiting, Jingxi also experienced profound personal loss. The death of her mother added another layer of grief, deepening the emotional weight of her continued search. Even in mourning, she did not abandon her determination, maintaining focus on the objective that had defined her life for decades. Her actions reflected a balance between practical participation in institutional systems and sustained emotional resolve. The DNA database represented structured progress, while her continued belief illustrated the persistence required for unresolved cases missing clear closure. This stage of her journey demonstrated the reality of slow procedural developments and the emotional discipline required to endure prolonged silence. Jinxi's involvement emphasized how modern investigative tools function alongside personal endurance in complex missing persons cases. Though immediate clarity remained unavailable, her participation ensured that Mao Yin's case remained active with informal records, characterized by patience and unwavering purpose, through quiet perseverance and measured, determined expectation for eventual confirmation and understanding. She continued to monitor developments connected to the database with careful attention, understanding that progress within institutional frameworks often required extended timeframes and methodical verification. Her expectations remained realistic yet driven by quiet belief, recognizing that resolution depended on accuracy, documentation, and procedural integrity. Each update, however minor, was approached with controlled focus rather than emotional impulse. This period reinforced her awareness that perseverance required both restraint and patience. The absence of immediate answers did not weaken her involvement, but instead strengthened her commitment to remain engaged within official processes. Through sustained consistency, Jinxi maintained her place within the network of documented cases, ensuring that Mao Yin's disappearance was neither dismissed nor forgotten, but preserved within an evolving system committed to eventual clarity and truthful identification and sustained institutional accountability. Mao Yin was located through age progression imagery and facial recognition technology in Chengdu, marking a decisive development after 32 years of uncertainty. Authorities identified a man whose appearance matched the projected image and contacted him to request a formal DNA test. He complied with the procedure, and the results confirmed that he was indeed Mao Yin, the long-missing son of Jingxi. This verification provided the first definitive answer since his disappearance. Before their meeting, Jingxi experienced deep emotional hesitation. She feared that Mao Yin might not recognize her or accept her as his mother, especially since he had built an independent life far from his place of birth. The anticipation carried uncertainty, shaped by years of anticipation and repeated disappointment. Her concern reflected an awareness that emotional reunion required acceptance as well as identification. When they finally met at the airport, Mao Yin ran toward her, calling her mother and embracing her without hesitation. The moment ended decades of separation and transformed prolonged searching into confirmed connection. The embrace signified recognition, emotional acknowledgement, and restored identity within the same immediate exchange. It was later confirmed that Mao Yin had been sold to another family for €700 following his abduction. He had lived under different circumstances while remaining unaware of his biological origins. Ironically, he had followed Jinxi's search on television, hoping the determined woman would one day find her missing child. He never realized that the child she was searching for was himself. Although this reunion resolved Mao Yin's identity, the question of who abducted him and orchestrated the illegal sale remained unanswered. Authorities continued efforts to determine responsibility, yet the perpetrator's identity was unresolved. Despite the closure of personal separation, the case retained an open element linked to accountability and legal resolution. Jinxi continued dedicating her time to supporting other missing children cases, maintaining involvement in awareness efforts and assistance initiatives. Her experience reinforced her commitment to helping families facing similar uncertainty. The reunion marked a significant conclusion, while her advocacy sustained a forward-facing mission. The resolution of this case represented a rare moment of fulfillment within a broader crisis. It demonstrated how perseverance, institutional effort, and developing technology could converge to achieve identification and reunion. Mao Yin's return provided clarity, while the unanswered details surrounding the kidnapping remained a factual reality. Jinxie's renewed connection with her son did not diminish her awareness of the wider social issue that had enabled such disappearances to occur repeatedly across the country. She remained actively involved in outreach and coordination for families still searching, offering guidance and shared understanding while advocating for continued attention to unresolved cases. Her personal reunion strengthened her resolve to support long-term efforts focused on prevention, awareness, and documented recovery, ensuring that the outcome of her experience contributed to a collective framework of responsibility and support benefiting future families facing uncertainty.